so hit your Wayback Machine, and we're going to look at something called the Tavistock Institute. Now, see, in the wake of the Enlightenment, the notion arose at an intellectual elite people. A distinguished social stratum can be traced back to classical history. The elite classes of intellectuals as well-educated people emerged in most European countries. The intelligentsia, I'm reading something here, by the way, so it sounds like I'm reading a little bit. I am. Is a social class of people engaged in complex mental and creative labor directed at the development and dissemination of culture, encompassing intellectuals and social groups close to them, such as artists, mystics, psychologists, psychiatrists, scientists, and teachers. It is a forerunner of what we call today the psychedelic intelligentsia and today's New Age spiritual fusion. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit right now about there's going to be some spiritual things. As I've told you in the past, there's no way I can dig out all of this because I'm not trying to be a proselytizer. What I'm trying to do is share with you how these various groups think, and the only way to get into some of that thinking sometimes is to touch upon the spiritual or religious bent of some of these things as well. So as I read this, bear that in mind and dig out of it what's usable to you in your faith. I don't sit here and play proselytizer faith. I don't like that. I don't teach that. So please understand, as I share with you anything out of my faith or my understanding, and that some of these things that I share with you are just what I think, and you, again, can come to your own conclusion. But like time, I've always believed, and this is true, that societies, cycles of time, everything, they're all cyclical. They're always in a continuous process of constructing themselves and deconstructing from within. Utopian socialists are forerunners of communal hippie life. Intentional communities and cooperatives, utopian nostalgia is exemplified in the Star Trek and Star Wars philosophy. The dystopian reflection is The Matrix, the postmodern Brave New World. Now, quasi-socialist intellectuals created hypothetical visions of perfect, egalitarian, and communal societies without actually concerning themselves with the manner in which these societies would be sustained, yet they shared a dream. The Theosophical societies cover the origin and development of the cosmos and human development in all the planes of being, from its beginning to its end. It is a philosophy of process, transformation, and evolution towards an extraordinary human potential. And out of this utopian and scientific socialism came theosophy, the British Guild Socialism, the Fabian Society, Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells, Tavistock, and the iconoclast, the dreaded Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley is an infamous occultist. Occultism has served as an alternative account of the world available to people dissatisfied with an orthodox view of things, scientifically and politically, since the late 18th century. Older than theosophy, with roots in Kabbalah, Hermetics, and pantheism, magic, with a CK at the end, was a practical application of causing change to conform with will, using very specific principles. They both embrace what's called the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, which reflects the identity of man as a microcosm. The cryptocracy, through economics and mass mind control, is involved in transformation, or what's called alchemical processing, of mass consciousness by psychological mind manipulation. With the help of these foundations and secret societies, experiments in world shaping continue through the multimedia and military campaigns. The goal is to seed and control megatrends so that the masses live as controlled puppets, what are called wage slaves, for the ruling elite. Occult societies have a long tradition of influence, peddling and providing covers for espionage. They are conduits of trust that transcend national borders and can cover a spy network. Naturally, occultists influence one another, beliefs, whether they were acknowledged or not. Black intelligence ops, also called esoterics, has been in a department in most intelligence services. In the M16, it was called the Occult Bureau. The SS also had an Occult Bureau. The Watch were FDR's super-secret team of occult countermeasures, arcane assimilations, paranormal and psychic investigation. After the war, the watch redirected its interest to UFO phenomenon. Now, it's very interesting because in my own life, I had a chance to encounter a couple of people who were involved with the federal government, the U.S. government, testing of psychic phenomena. Specifically, there was a man by the name of Uri Geller. The United States government at that point was testing Uri Geller's ability to, if you remember, he could bend spoons. You can probably find he's now kind of a pop culture phenomenon. He later came out and admitted that he was a fraud. But there was a belief that maybe he had these psychic abilities, that they could be turned into a military usage. And though he was a fraud, there are other elements to this that went and looked into such things as astral projection, the ability to see from what's called remote seeing or remote scrying. But these all came out of that movement. Now, the two people that I had contact with were in the area of magic, because in my background I was an illusionist magician. I was with the IBM, which is the International Brotherhood of Magicians, the PCAM, Pacific Coast Association of Magicians, Society of American Magicians. I'm honored. I'm a 25-year member of IBM, which makes you a what's called Order of Merlin, and just have a real good background in that. And these two guys who I knew were a guy by the name of Jerry Andrus and Professor Ray Hyman. Now, Jerry Andrus and Professor Ray Hyman were brought into this to go look at these various paranormal psychic things as a magician would view them, as a psychologist. Now, Ray Hyman's a psychiatrist, psychologist, and Jerry Andrus was a magician. Now, they brought these two people together along with several other people, and they went and looked at this thing. You might be familiar with the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. This was kind of what was going on during this period of time. Of course, that's a movie that's somewhat based upon some of this testing and so forth. It was happening in the military during that time. The esoteric unit. They were studying the teachings of Theosophy and of Blavatsky. They were studying the Kabbalah. They were studying all of this stuff, and they were trying to meld it into something they could conclusively use to influence people, kind of Manchurian candidate them. So they came up with things like Tavistock. And, this also came through, what's very interesting is if you look at the history of subliminal stimuli, which is kind of what came out of this, it's interesting to note some of the comparisons and groups that were involved. And I'm just going to go here to Wikipedia. I'm going to look at the history of subliminals, because subliminals are one of the ways in which you folks are being manipulated. This is one of the mind piracy things that are happening. The director of Yale Psychology Laboratory, E.W. Scripture, Ph.D., published The New Psychology in 1897, which described the basic principles of subliminal messages. In 1900, Knight Dunlop, an American professor of psychology, flashed an imperceptible shadow to subjects while showing them a Mueller-Lyer illusion containing two lines that pointed arrows on both ends, which created the illusion of different lengths. Some of you may have seen this. Dunlop claimed that the shadow influenced his subjects subliminally in their judgment of the lengths of the lines. Although these results were not verified in scientific study, American psychologist Harry Lee Hollingworth reported in an advertising textbook that such subliminal messages could be used by advertisers. During World War II, the hard word to read, Tavistock, an instrument which projects pictures for an extremely brief period, was used to train soldiers to recognize enemy warplanes. Today, this same unit is used to increase reading speed or to test sight. In 1957, market researcher James Vickery claimed that quickly flashing messages on a movie screen in Fort Lee, New Jersey, had influenced people to purchase more food and drinks. Vickery coined the term subliminal advertising and formed the Subliminal Projection Company based on his 6-week test. Vickery claimed that during the presentation of the movie Picnic, he used the same machine to project the words, "Drink Coca-Cola," and "Hungry? Eat popcorn," for 1/3000th of a second at 5-second intervals. Vickery during the test, sales of popcorn and Coke in that New Jersey theater increased 57.8% and 18.1%, respectively. However, in 1962, Vickery admitted to lying about the experiment and falsifying the results, the story itself being a marketing ploy. An identical experiment conducted by Dr. Henry Lynch showed no increase in cola or popcorn sales. A trip to Fort Lee, where the first experiment was alleged to have taken place, would have shown straight away that the small cinema there couldn't possibly have had 45,699 visitors through its doors in the space of 6 weeks. This thus led people to believe that Vickery actually did not conduct his experiment at all. However, before Vickery's confession, his claims were promoted by Vance Picker's book, The Hidden Persuaders, and led to a public outcry and to many what are called conspiracy theories, boy, we heard that term before here, of governments and cults using the technique to their advantage. The practice of subliminal advertising was subsequently banned in the United Kingdom and Australia, and by American networks and the National Association of Broadcasters in 1958. But in 1958, Vickery concluded a television test in which he flashed the message, "Telephone now," hundreds of times during a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation program and found no noticeable increase in telephone calls. In 1973, commercials in the United States and Canada for the game Husker Du flashed the message, "Get it," during the same year. Wilson Bryan Key's book, Subliminal Seduction, claimed that subliminal techniques were widely used in advertising. Public concern was sufficient to cause the FCC to hold hearings in 1974, and the hearings resulted in an FCC policy statement stating that the subliminal advertising was contrary to the public interest and intended to be deceptive. Subliminal advertising was also banned in Canada following the broadcasting of the Husker Du ads there. The December 16, 1973 episode of Columbo, entitled Double Exposure, is based on subliminal messaging. It is used by the murderer, Dr. Bart Kepler, a motivational research specialist played by Robert Culp, to lure his victim out of his seat during the viewing of a promotional film, and by Lieutenant Columbo to bring Kepler back to the crime scene and incriminate him. Lieutenant Columbo has shown how subliminal cuts work in a scene mirroring James Vickery's experiment. In 1978, Wichita, Kansas TV station, KAKE-TV, received special permission from the police to place a subliminal message in a report on the BTK killer, bind, torture, kill. That's what BTK stands for, apparently, in an effort to get him to turn himself in. The subliminal message included the text, "Now call the chief," as well as a pair of glasses. The glasses were included because when the BTK murdered Nancy Fox, there was a pair of glasses lying upside down on her dresser. Police felt that seeing the glasses might stir up remorse in the killer. The attempt was unsuccessful, and the police reported no increased volume of calls afterward. A study conducted by the United States concluded that the cultural implications of subliminal indoctrination is a major threat to human rights throughout the world. Campaigners have suggested subliminal messages appear in music. In 1985, two young men, James Vance and Raymond Belknap, attempted suicide. At the time of the shootings, Belknap died instantly. Vance was severely injured and survived. Their families were convinced it was because of the British rock band Judas Priest. The families claimed subliminal messages told the listeners to do it in the song "Better by You, Better Than Me." The case was taken to court, and families sought more than $6 million in damages. The judge, Jerry Carr Whitehead, said the freedom of speech protections would not apply to subliminal messages. He said he was not convinced that hidden messages actually existed on the album, but left the argument to attorneys. The suit was eventually dismissed. In turn, he ruled it probably would not have been perceived without the power of suggestion, or the young man would not have done it unless he really intended to. In 1985, Dr. Joe Stussy testified at the United States Senate at the Parents Music Resource Center hearings that the message of a piece of heavy metal music may also be covert or subliminal. Sometimes sub-audible tracks are mixed in underneath other, louder tracks. These are held by the subconscious, but not the conscious mind. Sometimes the messages are audible, but are backwards, called backmasking. There are disagreements among experts regarding the effectiveness of subliminals, and we need more research on that. Folks, let me tell you, in the casino industry, they're well aware of the use of subliminals. Everything about the places is built around the idea